Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to start a new exciting reading vlog because today I'm going to start the fourth series that I want to read this year, and that is the Founders Trilogy. That's what it's called. The first book is Foundryside, and I'm gonna start that today. So currently I have no idea what this one is about, but I will tell you as soon as I got into Foundryside. But I'm very excited. This might come out before my third series, just because I need to read this one very fast because of Magical Readathon. So it might be like in the different publication order on the channel, but you will deal with that. But starting, it is the fourth series. So yeah, I'm just very excited to start it. I hope that I will love it because, as I said, I will have to read it quite quickly because I need all 3 books for the Magical Readathon, and they're all over 500 pages. So we'll see how that goes. But the way this works is that I will always update you after the halfway point, and then when I finish a book, and let you know how I feel. So I hope you're excited too, and good luck to me. So I can't even believe how bad the weather and therefore the lighting is, and I desperately need a haircut, which I will get later today. But I'm currently halfway through my book Foundryside, the first book in the Founders Trilogy, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about it. I don't have a ton of time, so let's keep it short and simple. In this book, we are following our main character of Sancha, who is a thief, and in the beginning of the story, she's on her way to steal something that she will get a lot of money for, but she has no idea what it is. It is quite the coup, so there is a lot of danger involved, so we're jumping right into the action. But when she actually steals the thing, she realizes that that is something that should not get into the wrong hands, and so she doesn't hand it over and get the money. She's on the run now. And then she has some like unlikely allies, mostly a like well-born person who is trying to establish kind of a police force, and with that a little bit of justice in this city. So the city we're kind of looking at is very specific because we have these big merchant houses that have all the wealth, and they live on something called campos. So it's basically cities within the city that is like walled off, and if you don't have the right access keys, you can't get into them. And that's where all the wealthy people live. And in between those different campos, we have other parts of the city, like Foundryside, where all the poor people live, and it's not really housing, it's all like very crooked and just very precarious. So that's kind of the city that we're looking at. And this city also has colonies, kind of, where there are slaves, and we also get a little bit of a look into that as the story progresses. And then we have the magic system, and the magic is very scientific in a way because the magic works through scrivings. So basically you write rules onto objects, and with these rules you can change the reality of these objects. But you have to be very, very careful because if you make any mistakes, it can have horrible consequences. So a lot of people have died in researching the scrivings, but they're used for a ton of things. So for example, you can convince like an arrow that it's actually falling down while it is like shooting straight, so they can go for a longer distance and with more velocity. So stuff like that, or in wagon wheels so that the carts will actually drive themselves and stuff. So the scribings are everywhere. And now the special thing with our main character is that she is scribed herself. So she has a metal plate in her head that was scribed. So she has abilities that normal people don't have, and she's trying to hide that because she knows that that would be very interesting for the merchant houses who would probably try to do like experiments on her. So she's trying to hide that, but it kind of helps her on the heist that she's doing. So that's the basic setup of the story, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't think it will be quite the 5-star read, we'll see. Right now I have like a very like 4, maybe 4.5 star feeling with it. I do enjoy the main character, she's very fierce. She is small, but she's strong, and yeah, she has like a lot of like abilities because of her like scribings and stuff. So I really enjoy her. She's quite feisty, and she also has like quite the dramatic backstory, and right now at the halfway point we actually learn a little bit more detail about that. It also has depictions of kind of like PTSD. I'm not quite sure how well that is represented because I don't have any experience with that, so I can't really say anything about that, but it is at least hinted at that that's what's happening to some of the characters. And I really like the relationship between the main character and the object that she stole. Now that might sound strange, but if you read the book, it becomes much clearer. But the object isn't actually just an object. It has a mind and they can talk, and it is hilarious. I really like the relationship between the two, and also like the whole mystery with that object. Like, where did it come from? How does it work? Like, was it always an object, or is there like an actual person in there somehow? We don't really know like the boundaries of the magic, just because before this society there was a different one, and they were supposedly able to do like much greater things, like float through the air and stuff like that. So it seems like the magic that the society has right now is only like a small piece of what would actually be possible. So it's not quite clear where that object comes from and how old it is and stuff like that. So that's the kind of mystery. But then we also have the kind of action plot with the person who actually wanted Sancha to steal that object, and now Sancha is basically on the run from them and they're trying to kill her. So there's also like that whole mystery, like who is it and what is their plan, and just like, can Sancha escape? So I'm very intrigued. There seems to be kind of like a sapphic romance in the making as well, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, as I said, it's very action-packed, very fun, very fast-paced, so I'm really liking it so far, and I'll let you know more once I get to the end. Okay, so I just finished Foundryside and it is time for the update. I gave this book a weak 4-star, like something around a 3.75, but since I don't do that, I rounded it up. But this was fun. It was a good book, but I still had some issues with it, and it's just not a book that was exactly written for me. This book had a lot more plot and action than I usually read, and therefore I felt like the character work was missing, especially with the side characters. So we have our main character of Sancha, and I feel like we get to know her quite well, but then we have a lot of other important characters like Gregor and Orso and Berenice and Claudia and Giovanni. And so all of these, I feel like they stay very, very flat. Especially Orso, we do get a few things about his past, but I feel like it was never quite enough for me to understand him as a person. And it was very hard for me to figure out whether he's on the good or the bad side, because yeah, he just felt very slippery, which I think in the beginning is intentional, but then by the end, I think you're supposed to have a picture of him and to kind of root for him as well. So that was a bit odd, and it just made me care less. And then again, with Gregor, we have quite the tragic story and also very horrific story, like something that happened to him that we learn in this book is very, very horrible and such a horrible experience. But again, I felt like he stays so flat, like we don't really get to see his real feelings. And there is especially a part of struggle where he kind of has to fight his own mind in the end. And we don't get to see that. And I thought there were just many, many missed opportunities to flesh out these characters, to really give them a personality, and to make me as a reader care, because I'm a character-driven reader, so that's my number one thing I want to see. I want to see great characters that just stick in my head and that I can't forget. And I didn't get that here, and that was a little bit sad. So that's why this can't really be more than a 4-star book for me, and it feels more on the weaker end, but 3.5 feels like not doing it justice because it is such an imaginative world and plot, and I actually was quite interested in what was going on, but just not in an emotional way, just in a like cognitive way. Like I wanted to know what was going to happen to these characters. So yeah, I did enjoy the plot. I felt like the whole slavery theme was handled a little bit clumsily as well. There is quite an important part about this question of being a tool, being a slave, being someone who can be owned versus being free. That is quite an important discussion in this book. But I just felt like all the parts that we got about this type of slavery that they have in this world, it just felt like what a white man imagines slavery to be like. Like it felt very cliche. And I'm not saying that I know so much better, but I've just written better accounts or like fictionalized versions of slavery in other books. And so I felt like this one fumbled it a little bit and was just a little bit too cliche. The ending was quite a lot, like there were quite a few surprises that I did not see coming in the plot. And so it was definitely, as I said, like intellectually engaging, and I wanted to know what would happen. I just didn't feel enough for like what I want to feel when I read a book like that, where things happen to characters. So overall, I would say if you like fast-paced, action-packed kind of heist stories, then totally go for it. But especially if you like good character work, I think you will be disappointed. This book also has quite an intriguing magic system that I very much enjoyed. So again, if you like that, you will probably enjoy this book. And also the like world building, I just struggled with a little bit. A lot of the names are Italian, so this all feels like it is supposed to lean Italian quite a bit. But I don't know why. Like, also the whole culture doesn't really remind me of anything Italian. Like, you could probably say that is like a reimagining of like Venice in like the 1700s or something. But it just didn't feel that way. So, yeah, that was a bit odd, just an odd choice, not to make it more of a fantasy world. And then some names also seem a bit strange to me. So, for example, we have Orso, and that means bear. And I don't know if that actually would be an Italian name. I don't know. But it just felt a little bit odd. Apart from that, I feel like we also have like a sapphic relationship, very like slowly starting to bloom in this first book. And again, because I felt like the characters don't really have much depth, I wasn't really rooting for them. I didn't really understand why they thought they were attractive, even though one of the characters literally spells it out on the page why they think the other person is attractive. So I'm not like emotionally invested in the couple, but again, if that's something that you like seeking out in your books, like LGBTQ representation, you have it here in this one regard. So I think I will go into a few minor or major spoilers right now. Probably not for too long because, as I said, I don't really care so much, so I don't really have an urge to talk about it. But if you haven't read the book, use the chapters to skip over this part. And so yeah, the ending was quite the wild ride. Especially with like all the like magic that was going on. I felt like a lot of it was a little bit like unprecedented and hard to understand, like what Sansha did with the gravity rig. It took me a moment to really wrap my head around what was going on there. I think you need a little bit of like physics understanding to really grasp it, and I don't have that. I'm sorry. Then also we have Gregor being scribed as well, so that was quite the surprise, even though throughout the book you get these hints that he should be dead, but he's not. And so this question of like, why is he even alive, it had come to me a couple of times. So having this kind of answer to that, even though it's not really, we'll see where that goes in the second book. But yeah, obviously his mother has some form of like contact to one of the Hierophants. I don't know, I think that word is so weird. But I don't know. And it's probably like the most powerful one, like the one with the wand and all that. We just know that he's kind of like Mothman right now. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where that storyline goes. But essentially with this first book, what we do is quite literally opening Pandora's box, but it's just Valeria's box. So in the second book, we will probably have to deal with that war that is now starting with, yeah, the like the maid thing, Valeria, and then the maker, which is probably like that guy, whatever his name was. So I was quite sad that Clef was kind of changed, killed, whatever. So I'm intrigued to see whether they will be able to bring him back, because I love the idea of like having a companion, but it's not an animal, but it is an object. So I thought it fit this series so well, and it fit the whole like steampunky vibe quite well. So yeah, I would love to see him come back in some way. I thought that this like last kind of glimpse that we get where he's in the machine, it was more confusing than anything to me, to be honest, because yeah, up until that point I thought I understood what he was, and now I'm like, I don't think I got it, because like then he's like, he was one of the makers too, but then he ended up in the key, so he was not just like a sacrificed mind. And that is confusing the hell out of me. So I hope we get some more answers there, and we'll see. But yeah, I thought Clef was such a good kind of addition to that. I'm not quite sure how I feel about Sancha now having those powers, because it does change her quite a lot, like the things she can do. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I'll tell you after reading the second book, because I think that will just solidify it for me, because I just really liked her powers in the beginning, the way that she could just like feel the objects and stuff like that. So I also really liked the explanation why she could do that. I thought that was quite interesting. But now she has this much more advanced kind of set of talents. So we'll see. A lot has changed for our characters throughout the span of this book. And I do like the whole thing with like unlikely allies coming together. Allies, not allies. So we'll see. I'll update you once I'm halfway through the second book. Please excuse the way I look. I had to get up very early today for work. But I'm now halfway through Shorefall and I wanted to give you a quick update. And the second book is going much better than the first one. First of all, I feel like I have more time to focus on the book because I had the whole weekend and then tomorrow is a day off here in my town. So yeah, it's going really well. I'm 50% through. I feel like the stakes are so much higher now in the second book, and especially for the first half. It just felt like a lot happened, a lot was going on, and yeah, just like super high stakes. Like there were already like 2 major scenes where our characters are in so much danger, and we're exploring some kind of like mental health representation as well, which I'm not quite sure how it's gonna develop, but it deals with the whole idea of just trauma from war, from killing people and stuff like that. So in this world, it is kind of caused through a magical reason. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about it quite yet, but I think it still has a lot of like the real world things. Like we'll see. I'm very intrigued by that. And yeah, our main character of Sancha now is definitely a little bit of a different person. First of all, she's in a relationship now, which might be a spoiler. Maybe I should say it's a spoiler. But yeah, a lot has happened to her. She's not the like scared, desperate thief anymore. And so I really like seeing her character develop, but then also have like some of the similar struggles that we've seen in the first book. But I just feel like now, because she has more of a support system, it's more interesting to me to read about. And we have this like kind of established group of characters that we're following. So while I feel like the character work is still a little bit lacking and it's much more focused on the plot, on the action, I just enjoy it much more because I feel like even though all of that, I have gotten to know these characters. And I love the new villain that we get now. Not gonna spoil anything, but there is some development in the villain department, and I very much enjoy it. It's the villain is much more involved in the story. In the first book, it was more of the mystery of what was going on, but in this book now, we are fully aware, and it's not good. And the villain is very powerful, but I like that Sancha's group also has someone in their corner to kind of counterbalance things, but again, it's not that sure whether we can trust that person. So I feel like yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think I'm enjoying this book actually more than the first one. Not that I didn't enjoy the first one, but I feel like now I'm like really kind of sucked into this world and I definitely care and want to know. And so I hope that I will make quick work of the second half of this book as well and let you know more once I finish the book. Okay, so I finished Shorefall last night, and what a wild ride it was. Yeah, this second book was definitely a lot. We have the highest stakes, we have like 2 entities that both potentially could destroy the world, and we don't really know whom to trust, whether anyone can be trusted, to be fair. So yeah, there was a lot going on during the end of this, and I thoroughly enjoyed the second book. I felt like it took more time to get us some info on the characters, to make us feel some of their feelings, and there were quite a few like sad moments, and I felt like the book took more time to experience those. I wouldn't say that we have that with all the sad things that happen, but especially, yeah, during the middle part, there is definitely some scenes where we have a little bit more time to, yeah, to really see what these characters are going through. So I really enjoyed that. And so overall, I decided to give this book 4.5 stars. I was thoroughly intrigued the whole way through. I read it really quickly, which was fortunate because I had more days where I didn't have anything else to do, so I could really fly through this book, which was great. I always enjoy if I can read the book in the pace that I want, and not have like external factors that prevent me from reading and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just great, and I would definitely recommend this. I have a lot of series where I like the second book the most, so we'll see whether this is the case here as well, or whether book 3 will completely blow me out of the water. Now, I think I forgot to mention in the halfway update that we do have a 3-year time jump before the first and the second book. So there is some like developments that are kind of skipped over, but I felt like I didn't really miss a lot. It was easy to just get back with these characters, and obviously they have changed in these 3 years. But for me, that was like a good thing. I felt like because they had changed, I could get a better grasp on them. And also in the second book, we do have more of that like found family feeling, because these characters have really come together to create something together and now to fight for that. And I really, really like that. Yeah, that's just one of my favorite things, I would say. And it still had a little bit of those like heist vibes, but not as much as the first book. And I feel like, yeah, there was still a ton of action, but it was toned down so that we could also see more of the characters, and we got more of the magic as well, and we get more answers to that. So yeah, definitely recommend. We'll see where this third book goes now. I just started the beginning last night, so we do have a time jump again. So the third book is now 8 years, I think, after the second one, which means again a lot of like developments that we didn't see. So we'll see how I feel about that, but I'll tell you that in the update when I'm halfway through the first book. I think for the spoilery part, I'm going to go into a couple small things now, and you can use the chapters to jump ahead if you haven't read Shorefall yet. And yeah, where even to begin? So I thought it was so interesting how in this book we had these like two super powerful beings who are struggling with each other and have been struggling with each other for like thousands of years. But now they're both in a way diminished because of their struggle. So we have Gracedes, I don't know how you would say that name, and we have Valeria. And obviously our characters decided to side with Valeria, but they never really trust her, and I thought that was such an interesting part of the intrigue, because as a reader you're also never sure whether you can really trust Valeria. And I loved the way that these characters just trusted themselves, like as a group, so much. And there's just so much of growing together that we see, that they're trying to help each other. And especially Gregor's storyline was so beautiful and heartbreaking. The scene where he died was so heartbreaking to me, even though we obviously knew that he will come back, because that's what his scribings do. But yeah, just his struggle with his identity when he knows that there's probably a lot of memories that he can't access anymore, like who is he even, and the way that he knows that at every point something could happen that will make him into this like killing machine again. I thought that was it was just heartbreaking to see, and it was I was glad that we got these moments where we could see his feelings more in depth and really understand this character, because in the first book at the beginning he seems like this like perfect golden boy, and obviously as the series progresses this crumbles. And so now he is part of the city. He is kind of like the evil thing in the third book. So I really don't know how this will play out. Obviously there's this small part in my brain that hopes that he can be saved somehow, because they have this like kind of like exercise stick now. Maybe, I don't know if they can save him, but yeah, it's just his character arc is so fascinating to me, and also the moment he killed his mother and stuff. So it's, yeah, I really like his like storyline. And then we have Sancha and Berenice, and I think they're cute together. But also I think if you really liked Sancha, how she was in the first book, there is quite a bit of a change in her because of her connection to Berenice, and just yeah, I don't know, I just felt like she's quite a different character, and I liked that this was also called out quite a bit. So there were scenes where like character was like, Sancha never used to say words like that and that. So I did like that it also acknowledged how much this character has changed because of how this magic works and everything like that, but also because she's in like very different circumstances now. And I didn't know how I felt about her being like this expert scriber now because of her abilities, but yeah, I did enjoy seeing them develop. I think Berenice is quite badass, and I'm very intrigued to see where that goes in the third book now. I also think it's a very interesting idea that because of Sancha's plate, her scribings, that she will age faster, and I'm also intrigued to see how that will translate in the third book as well, because we already got a few glimpses of that in the second book, and I think it's a very interesting concept because, yeah, I don't know, it just feels like something very unique, something I haven't really seen before in such fantasy stories, that a character would age fast and then realize that they can't like climb up a wall and stuff like that anymore. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see more about that. And then obviously we have Clef, who is rescued, which was also very interesting. I felt like, yeah, the whole like thing with the like time and stuff, I wouldn't say I always understood how the magic worked in those aspects. Like sometimes you need human sacrifice, sometimes you don't, and stuff like that. I feel like there is probably reason there, but I'm fine with just going along with the story. I don't always need to understand everything perfectly, even though I felt like there were a couple of things that I did not understand. Like, for example, they have the Imperiate, so I didn't really understand why they didn't use it right when the whole like city thing started, because I don't know, maybe the range wouldn't have been big enough to like get to all of the foundries, so that's probably why. But like there were a couple of things where I was like, isn't there an easier way to do all of this? I don't know, because yeah, what Orso did in the end, I felt like he could have done much earlier. But yeah, probably if like such dramatic things happen, you don't always think of the easiest, most logical solution right off your head. So I don't know. But yeah, I really liked it. I really liked it. I can't wait to go into the third book now. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with Gracedes, because I think his character is so fascinating, especially because we always think that in this like memory that Sancha saw that he is the father, but he's actually the child. So that changes a lot. And I'm really intrigued to see whether he will be like the evil guy in the third book, or whether they will somehow find a way to work together with him to stop the city. I don't know. But yeah, I thought he was fascinating as a character, as a villain. I really liked all the scenes where he talks to Sancha, and yeah. I'm just very intrigued. But yeah, I'll update you again when we're into the final book. So It's a migraine day today. I'm sorry if I don't look my best, but I'm trying. I'm now halfway through Locklands, and this book is very interesting. We definitely have like a very different situation from the other two books because a lot has changed. We have that time jump, but I feel like the beginning was very hard to read. Like, I think like it's a long time, like probably like the first like 60 pages or something, or a kind of battle that we get thrown into, but it feels like very, I don't know, like industrialized, like mass destruction kind of battle, not the like fantasy everyone has their sword out kind of battle. So it's definitely tense from the beginning and the stakes are very high, but it made me feel like very anxious, that first part of the book. But then we get more back into the kind of like scheming and yeah, like kind of doing things in the background hidden away kind of deal. And so after that initial beginning of the book, we get more into the feeling of like the first books again, and it's basically Sancha being like, that is what I'm good at, so let's just try it. And I really like that, the way it turned around after that. We do have quite a few like developments and yeah, just things changing, like new weapons that are so scary. I think they're very, very scary. And now we're like right in the middle of the book. We have a situation that again seems like very, very tense, like everyone could die at any moment kind of deal. So I'm very intrigued to keep reading now because I'm definitely sucked back into the story. And as I said, after initially struggling with the first little bit, I feel like now I'm completely in it with the characters again. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how it all ends, because we've already lost quite a few characters, some even like more off screen. And I'm intrigued to see whether we will be able to like save certain characters or not. So we'll see. I do like the way that we see like a completely different society, a completely new way of being in the first half of this book as well. I think that is a very interesting like thought experiment. Like, how would society be if we could change this like one thing? And I do like that we have like one character from the second book that still is in the third book, and they're hating it. They're just hating it all. And I think it's great to see that there's like some consistency, even though like all the surroundings have changed so much because we had this like 8-year time jump. But yeah, that also adds a little bit of humor, and obviously we have other characters who bring in more of a light tone. But yeah, I would say the like story overall is very tense, very bleak in certain situations. But there's also this hopeful tone of like this idea of making humanity better, which is basically at the core of like everyone's motivation, which is also quite interesting because now we have like 3 kind of factions and they all want to make the world better, but they just have a very, very different understanding of what that would look like. So yeah, I really like it. I can't wait to read the second half now, and then we'll do the final verdict whether this series is worth reading, in my opinion. Not this book making me sob in the middle of the night. So last night I finished Locklands, and we need to talk because this was an amazing finale. I loved this book. Now, the second half of this book definitely turned out to be one of the best things I have read in a long time. And I absolutely loved it. The way some of the characters progressed and just the way that they make all these like very intricate plans. And in every other series, you know they would succeed. But in this one, things go to shit every time, and it just feels so realistic. Like, these characters don't really have any plot armor, I would say. Like, obviously there are some main characters that maybe survive like very gruesome things that maybe they shouldn't, but it just feels more realistic than a lot of the other stories. And I just loved it. I cried at the end. Maybe I will edit that clip in, we'll see. But yeah, it was a lot. I loved the ending. I also really enjoyed the acknowledgements where the author talked about writing this book during the pandemic and just the feelings of the pandemic that were, yes, so prevalent. Like, we all had probably quite similar feelings during that time, and how that connects to the book and stuff like that. And there was like this line where he talked about basically the gap between humanity's brilliance and wisdom, and that we have to decide how wide we wanna let this gap be. And I love that. It just fit the book so well, but it also fit the pandemic so well. And yeah, I just really, really enjoyed that, and I would highly recommend this series if you're in the least bit interested. I think it's definitely worth it. It is such a satisfying conclusion. It doesn't feel like the characters get anything that they didn't earn. So yeah, I would just highly, highly recommend. And I think that's all I'm gonna say for the spoiler-free part. I always think I have more to say. Oh yeah, one thing maybe. I don't know if I already said that in the last update, but if you like The Darkling and Shadow and Bone, I think that there is a character in this last book that you will really, really enjoy. At least for me, it had like very similar vibes, but just the whole like backstory and everything made so much more sense in a way. So definitely keep that in mind, that there is a very, very similar like character type in this last book. But yeah, it's just fantastic. Go read it. And I really hope there will be like some kind of an adaptation, a TV show, a movie series, something like that, because it just works so well, and I would love to see this world come to life. Like, I could also imagine like some kind of like an animated series for this would probably be really, really cool. And yeah, at the heart, this is a book about humanity, about inventions, about, as I already said, the brilliance that we have that sometimes doesn't come with wisdom. It's about trying to fix things, and while doing that, just making everything much, much worse. It's also about the arrogance of men, and it's about love, it's about family. It's so much. I really, really liked it. So yeah, I'm gonna go into a couple spoilery bits, but since my battery is running low, I try to keep it short. But if you have not read this book, thank you so much for watching. I hope you will pick it up now, and I will talk to you soon. And for all the other people who have read this book already, I just want to share with you a couple of more thoughts that I had when I read this. So I'm not quite sure where we left off. So much has happened, and I must be honest with you, I read the majority of the second half during a migraine, so my memory is really bad during those times, especially. But there is so much that was going on in the second half. I think I really enjoyed the way that we get presented Clef's story, and then yeah, the whole like family idea that we have. I guess we get to see him being someone very, very different, but it still kind of makes sense. And I thought that was very interesting how, after forgetting about his life, Clef still feels like the same person, even though he really isn't. And I appreciated that in a way. And I also loved seeing this like ancient kind of society, the way they used the scrivings and how they try to protect themselves by having this rule that the what were they called? Well, the people who could do the scrivings, that they don't see people dying, because then they would see kind of the reality rules behind that and stuff. I really liked that they tried to protect themselves, but then Clef in his grief kind of went against that and basically destroyed everything. And I thought it was so interesting that we have this like whole story that is like so big in scope, and it all started with a man who thought he could fix reality. And obviously throughout the book we always think that way about Gracedes, but he's actually not the one who started it all. He kind of inherited it in a way, and I thought that was so interesting, especially because we get to love Clef so much, seeing him through Sancha's eyes during the story. And then also with his wife, her being basically the root of, what's her name? The name changes so much. Valeria was the name. So yeah, just her like being locked in this box, and then obviously they tried to make her more powerful and stuff like that. It was so interesting, and also how she lost so much more of her like humanness, her mortality, I guess, because she was dead in a way. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. And I think that this whole backstory just felt so interesting to me. But then also on the like storyline that we're actually following, I just really enjoyed it. I loved seeing how Gracedes kind of tries to go against what he's always been told to do, because basically he inherited this like big task of his father, but it wasn't in a way what he wanted to do. And so him then coming to Jiva and seeing how the society works with all the twinning and this like kind of like hive mind situation, and him being so fascinated by it, and seeing that in the end all he ever did was seeking power for himself to fix things, instead of distributing power to just give people a chance, basically. So I really, really loved seeing him like interact with these like different Jiva people, and just seeing that there is so much more out there, that especially when people come together and work together, they can create so much more than one single person could ever do. And I really, really loved seeing that. And then we have this love story of Sancha and Berenice. And I think because we see their whole kind of relationship, which I also thought was so lovely. We see them kind of meet for the first time in the first book, and then slowly fall in love, and then have this like very short reprieve in Foundryside, and then seeing basically how it ends in a way. And it made me cry so much. It was so, the like whole epilogue was just gut-wrenching, and I just cried, and I thought it was so beautiful. And as I said, like these characters really had to pay a price to save the world, and that just felt very realistic to me. And still we get this kind of like happy ending, like in the end both of these characters kind of get what they want. Like Berenice is back in Foundryside, and then Sancha gets this kind of future where they're all together and still in love. At least that is implied by the ending. And I thought that was so lovely to kind of bring that back around in a way. But it also felt like the ending of Lord of the Rings, where Frodo basically, like, he saves the world, he destroys the ring in a way, but he can't save the world for himself. And I had a very, very similar feeling with this book, where Sansa and Berenice basically save the world, but they can't save it for themselves, because Berenice can't be part of the, like, hive mind anymore, so she can't participate in the society that she basically founded, or that is founded on her ideas. And at the same time, Sansa is basically locked out of the world completely. And so it had this feeling of like selflessness, of like saving the world, but not for you, but for everyone else. And I love that. That's just something like, because I love the Lord of the Rings so much, that like triggers a whole bunch of emotions. So yeah, there's so much more to talk about, but I don't want to overdo it. But this just really, really worked for me. I loved the imagery. I loved the character developments that we saw, the fate of all of these characters. I loved that we never really got to know where the people went in the end, like in the epilogue. I also really enjoyed that. So, I mean, you could say they found a way into heaven in a way because they're growing up. But then this morning, like tonight, I had like some kind of like weird space travel dream. So I was like, maybe they also went to a different planet. Who knows? Like anything could be up there. But yeah, I really enjoyed like keeping that open in a way, but also seeing how it was just a couple of years of this change, how society works. There was also such a profound change in these people to the point where they didn't speak anymore. And when they came to Berenice, they couldn't really tell her what was going on because they just didn't know how to talk anymore. So I think this is just so well done and I loved it. I hope that even more people will go read it and be amazed by this book. And that's it. I thank you for watching. As I said, I absolutely hope that if you have not read this yet, you will. And I'm already missing these characters. So yeah, I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!